At first, I told myself I was imagining it. The way David stopped looking at me when I spoke. The way his texts got shorter, his calls less frequent. He used to light up when we made plans. Now he canceled last minute with half-hearted excuses. "Work's crazy," he said. "I'm just tired." And I believed him, because I wanted to. But there was a tightness in my chest that wouldn't leave. A quiet voice whispering that something was off, even if I didn't want to face it yet. The hardest part was not knowing who to talk to. I felt like I was drowning in silence. So I leaned on the one person who'd always been there. Camila. She showed up with ice cream, with wine, with tissues. She sat on my couch, pulled me into her arms, and said all the right things. "You deserve better. Don't let him dim your light." And when the tears came, she let me sob on her shoulder. God, I needed her so much. She was my anchor when everything else felt like it was slipping away. I told her everything, every fear, every doubt. I laid my heart out in front of her like a broken puzzle, hoping she could help me make sense of the pieces. And she always listened. Or at least, I thought she was listening. I didn't know then that while I was spilling my soul to her, she was carrying a secret that would crush me. Looking back, there were signs, moments that should have made me pause. Like the way Camila always asked, "Have you two talked today?" with just a little too much curiosity. Or how she'd change the subject quickly whenever I mentioned trying to fix things with David. At the time, I thought she was just protective, just being a good friend. But now those memories sting. They feel like pieces of a puzzle I didn't realize I was solving in reverse. And David? He became a stranger in the house we once called ours. He'd kiss me goodbye without looking at me. I started memorizing the sound of his footsteps because I couldn't remember the sound of his voice anymore. It's a strange kind of loneliness, to feel so completely alone while someone's still sitting across the table from you. I kept telling myself, love changes, relationships go through seasons. But this wasn't winter. This was a freeze. A deep, deliberate freeze I wasn't prepared for. So I clung harder to Camila. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't the only one feeling this unraveling. And she did. Beautifully. She'd squeeze my hand and say, "Men like him never know what they have until it's gone." And I believed her. Every word. Because when you're breaking apart, you trust the hands that catch your pieces. I just didn't realize one of those hands was holding a knife behind its back. I remember one night in particular. I had just come home from a late shift, emotionally drained, holding on to the tiniest hope that maybe, just maybe, David would be waiting up for me. He wasn't. The lights were off, his side of the bed untouched. I sat at the edge of the mattress and called Camila. My voice cracked before I even said hello. And without hesitation, she came over. She brought chocolate croissants, my favorite, and a blanket, and she just held me while I cried. I thought that was love. Not romantic love, but sisterhood. Loyalty. Safe arms in a storm. I told her things I hadn't told anyone. I told her how scared I was of becoming invisible in my own relationship. I told her how I missed a version of myself that felt chosen. And she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're more than enough, Isa. He's the one losing something precious." I believed her. How could I not? She spoke like someone who saw my worth when I couldn't. And maybe that was the cruelest part. She knew exactly what I needed to hear. Because she knew exactly what she was taking. In that moment, I didn't know the truth. I didn't know that the woman wiping my tears was the same one giving him reasons to forget me. But something inside me started to shift that night. A whisper that maybe love wasn't the only thing being stolen from me. And that whisper, it wouldn't go away. It was such a small moment. So ordinary, it could have meant nothing. I asked Camila if I could borrow her phone. Mine was buried in my purse somewhere, and I just needed to call myself to find it. She handed it over without hesitation, chatting away like she always did. But the second I unlocked the screen, everything changed. A message popped up at the top. One of those little preview banners that don't wait for permission to spill secrets. And there it was. From David. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. She still has no idea. For a second, the world went quiet. Not dramatic, not slow motion, just still. Like my brain couldn't catch up to what my eyes had seen. My thumb hovered over the message. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. And then something in me, some buried instinct took over. I opened the thread, took screenshots of everything, and sent them to myself. All while nodding along to Camilla's voice as if nothing had happened. I even smiled. Can you believe that? I smiled and handed her phone back like I hadn't just watched my entire reality shatter. Inside, I was numb. But not in the way I expected. I didn't fall apart. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse into the floor like in the movies. I just stood there, holding on to that quiet like it was armor. Because in that moment, I knew something very clearly. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. Not until I was ready to burn the house down, with both of them still inside it. I played the part so well, it scared me a little. The calm friend, the grateful girlfriend. I texted Camila like I always did. I even called David that night, just to hear the sound of his voice knowing what I now knew. He sounded relaxed. He joked. He asked if I wanted to grab dinner later in the week. I said yes. I said it sweetly, like a woman who still believed in us. But inside, I was already planning the funeral of this lie, and they had no idea they were the guests of honor. Over the next few days, I became a student of silence. I watched them both, closely. Every word, every glance, every slip in their stories. It was surreal, like stepping out of my own life and watching it play out from the outside. I saw how Camilla's check-ins came more frequently. I noticed how David suddenly became more affectionate, like he could sense I was slipping through his fingers but didn't know why. They were both trying to manage their illusion, and I let them. I let them think they were safe. And during all of that, I was building something. Not a confrontation, a performance. If they wanted to play a game behind my back, I'd host the finale right in front of their faces. But to pull it off, I needed to pretend just a little longer. Pretend that I was healing, that I was finding peace, that I still believed my best friend was my shelter, and not the storm. I started rehearsing in my mind. What I'd say, how I'd stand, how I'd look them both in the eye without flinching. But mostly, I imagined the moment their faces would fall. That exact second when the truth would hit them like a wave they never saw coming. I didn't want revenge for the sake of being cruel. I wanted them to feel what I felt. That jarring, breath-stealing moment when the world shifts and nothing is safe anymore. Still, there were moments it almost broke me. Sitting across from Camila, listening to her comfort me with words soaked in betrayal. Watching David text me from across the table with the same fingers that had just typed, "Last night was amazing" to her. I swallowed 1,000 screams, smiled through 1,000 lies. But every time I wanted to confront them, to rip the mask off and shout, I remembered something. They didn't deserve my rage. They deserved my silence, and the stage I was preparing. So I kept going, kept smiling, kept planning. Letting the betrayal simmer just beneath the surface, untouched. I wasn't ready to strike. Not yet. But I was getting close, and they were walking straight into it. The idea came to me while I was folding laundry. Something about the quiet repetition of matching socks and smoothing out shirts gave me space to think clearly. I didn't want to fight. I wanted a memory, one they wouldn't forget. So I planned a dinner, just a small, intimate evening. I told Camila it was my way of celebrating healing and closing that chapter. I told David the same. They both accepted, smiling, supportive, probably proud of how well I was coping. That was the fun part. They still thought I was broken. I made it beautiful. Candlelight, soft music, real wine glasses instead of the cheap ones we usually used. I cooked the kind of meal David loved, slow-roasted, savory, nostalgic. Camilla offered to bring dessert, and I let her. Of course I did. It felt poetic. I even set out name cards like it was a holiday, like they were guests of honor at a table I'd built with my own pain. And maybe they were. My pain had taught me more about both of them than I ever wanted to know. I also invited a few close friends, people we'd all shared dinners with before. People who still believed in the friendship between me and Camilla, and the love story between me and David. People whose presence would make it harder for either of them to twist the truth when the time came. I told everyone it was about gratitude, that I just wanted to reflect on how much I'd grown. And in a way, that was true. I had grown, just not in the direction they thought. The night of the dinner, everything felt painfully perfect. The table was glowing, the air was warm with spices and soft conversation. I wore a dress I hadn't touched in months, something simple but powerful, like armor disguised as silk. Camilla arrived first, arms full of homemade tiramisu and that same radiant smile she always wore when she wanted to be adored. "You look amazing," she said, hugging me tightly. I smiled back. She had no idea she was stepping into her own undoing. David showed up 20 minutes later, flowers in hand. Lilies, my favorite, though I hadn't told him that in years. It was like he suddenly remembered how to act like a boyfriend again, just in time to play the role for an audience. He kissed my cheek like it meant something, like we hadn't spent the last month sleeping in silence. I welcomed them both in, told them how happy I was to have them there. Every word tasted like ash on my tongue, but I said it sweetly. I needed this scene to feel genuine. Our friends trickled in soon after. Laughs, hugs, wine bottles passed between hands. The room buzzed with warmth and nostalgia. Nobody suspected a thing. I made small talk. I asked about their kids, their work, their lives. I poured wine, passed plates, played hostess. It almost felt like the betrayal didn't exist. But then I'd glance at Camilla sitting comfortably beside David, and the fire inside me would flicker back to life. They had no idea that dessert wasn't going to be the highlight of the night. As the evening went on, I kept the conversation light, on purpose. I wanted them relaxed, leaning back in their chairs, sipping wine, laughing like they were safe. Camilla was glowing, soaking in compliments about her dessert. David had one arm draped casually behind her chair when he thought no one was looking. I noticed. Of course I noticed. I noticed everything. I let it all breathe, like a good wine. Let them dig their comfort deeper and deeper, thinking they'd won. Then came the moment I'd been preparing for. I clinked my glass, gently, and stood. "Thank you all for coming," I began, smiling like a woman reborn. "This dinner means more to me than you know. I've grown a lot these past few weeks, through heartbreak, through confusion, but mostly through clarity." I glanced at David, then Camilla. Both smiled, oblivious. And I wanted to share that journey with the people who stood by me. The projector remote was in my pocket, warm against my fingers. I told them I'd made a slideshow. Just a simple reflection, photos, moments, little pieces of what I'd survived. People nodded politely, raising their glasses. Camilla looked at me, misty-eyed. "That's so beautiful, Issa." I nodded back, stepping toward the screen, knowing full well this would be the last time she ever looked at me like that. The lights dimmed, the screen lit up, and the first photo appeared. The first photo was innocent enough, just me and David at a vineyard last fall, our arms around each other, cheeks flushed with laughter and wine. A perfect couple, at least on the surface. The room let out soft sighs, a few murmured ahs. I turned to look at him, watched his expression soften with nostalgia. Camila even reached for a napkin, dabbing her eyes like she was touched. I let the silence linger, warm and comforting. Then I clicked again. The second photo hit like a crack of thunder. David, in Camila's apartment. His car in the background. Her living room unmistakable. The timestamp clear as day in the corner. A breath caught in someone's throat. Camila's smile froze, eyes darting to the screen and back to me. David's body shifted in his chair. A forced chuckle escaped him. Wait, what's this? But I didn't answer. I just clicked again. The third slide silenced the entire room. Screenshots, text messages. Last night was amazing. I can't wait to touch you again. She has no clue. Names and photos displayed without apology. I didn't say a word. I let the images speak for me. Let the betrayal scream in pixels while I stood at the front of the room, poised, unmoved. The weight of their secrets now belonged to everyone watching. No one said a word, not at first. It was the kind of silence that presses against your skin. Heavy. Electric. Camila's eyes darted from face to face, as if someone might step in and save her. David opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked toward the door, like flight might be his only option. But no one moved. They just stared. And in that silence, I stepped forward and finally spoke. Not loudly, not with anger, just steady. I want to thank you all for being here, I said. For supporting me, for loving me, for listening when I thought I was losing my mind. My voice didn't shake. I looked straight at Camila. This woman, this friend, held me while I cried. She stroked my hair, told me I deserved better, told me I was too good for him. My eyes moved to David, who couldn't even meet them. And he proved her right. I paused, letting the room absorb every syllable. No dramatic gestures, no raised voice. Just truth, delivered like a blade slid quietly between ribs. The same friend who dried my tears, I said, was the one giving him reasons to make me cry. Someone gasped. Another whispered, "Oh my God." And still, I stood there, untouched by their shock, because I had lived it long before they saw it. Camila finally spoke, but it was barely more than a whisper. "Isa, I can explain." Her voice trembled, her fingers fidgeting with the napkin in her lap like a child caught in a lie. I tilted my head, almost amused. "Explain what?" I asked, my tone so calm it made her flinch. "The night I held your hand while crying over him? Or the night you were sleeping in his bed while pretending to be my safe place?" She went silent. Her mouth opened, then closed again. No explanation could survive in a room full of truth. David stood up then, stammering something about this being private, that it wasn't fair to ambush them like this. He even had the nerve to say we should talk about it, just the three of us. I almost laughed. "You made it public the moment you both made me a fool behind my back," I said. All I did was give the truth the audience it deserved. A few of our friends nodded quietly, their eyes no longer on me, but on them, on the liars. I didn't wait for a response. I turned off the projector, picked up my wine glass, and walked back to my seat. The room didn't applaud. It didn't need to. The silence said enough. Camila looked like a ghost. David was halfway to the door. But me? I sat taller than I had in weeks. The performance was over, the masks were off, and now the healing could begin, on my terms. In the days that followed, the air around me felt different, lighter, like I could finally breathe in my own home again. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge dripping in fire. The truth had done the work for me. Camilla's silence spoke louder than any apology she could have offered. She stopped reaching out after that night. No text, no call. Just a void where a friendship used to live. And honestly, it felt like peace, like scrubbing off the last layer of poison from my skin. David tried. A few desperate calls. One long email that started with, "I didn't mean to hurt you," and ended with, "Maybe one day you'll understand." But I didn't need to understand. I wasn't interested in closure from him. I had given myself that. The image of his face that night, panic where charm used to live, was enough. He'd been exposed, not just to me, but to everyone he thought would always see him as the good guy. And now, that mask was gone for good. Some people from the dinner reached out quietly, in shock, offering support. Others kept their distance, not knowing what to say. I didn't blame them. It's uncomfortable watching someone you thought you knew unravel, but I didn't need an audience anymore. The performance was over. What I needed now was stillness, a life with no lies whispering behind my back. And for the first time in a long time, that's exactly what I had. I started doing little things just for me. Buying fresh flowers for the kitchen table, taking long walks in the evening without checking my phone, cooking meals I loved without worrying whether someone else would eat them. There was a quiet beauty in that solitude. Not loneliness, freedom. I wasn't waking up every morning wondering who was lying to me. I wasn't rehearsing conversations in my head or reading between the lines. I was just living. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like a win. What surprised me most wasn't how much I missed them. It was how little I did. The grief I expected never came. I think part of me had already buried the relationship months ago, and maybe even the friendship too. What hurt wasn't losing them. It was realizing how long I'd kept myself small to keep them comfortable. But that version of me, the one who apologized for needing too much, who silenced her instincts, who cried into the arms of a traitor, she was gone. I wasn't mourning her. I was releasing her. I began writing again, just for myself. Nothing polished or poetic, just truths I had buried for too long. I filled page after page, not with bitterness, but clarity. And through those pages, I started to see myself clearly again. Not as someone broken, but as someone rebuilt. Stronger, sharper. No longer afraid of the dark, because I'd walked through it barefoot and came out the other side still standing. A few weeks later, I was sitting at a cafe reading when I looked up, and there she was, Camila, alone. Hair pulled back, face bare, eyes tired. She saw me before I saw her. And in that brief second, I watched her shoulders tense, her gaze drop, like guilt had weight, like shame lived just beneath her skin now. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I just met her eyes and lifted my chin, a small smile, not cruel, just knowing. She had no place in my life anymore, and we both understood it without a word. That moment wasn't about her. It was about me. The woman sitting there, book in hand, legs crossed, calm in her own company. That woman wasn't waiting for anyone to love her right. She had already chosen herself. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need forgiveness. What I needed was that quiet confirmation that I'd survived them. And more than that, I had outgrown them.